Thank you, Cathaoirleach, and thank you, Minister. Minister, I'm going to ask you a number of questions, but it's all around the same issue, and it's an issue that I've been raising since you took office, so I'm really glad to have the opportunity to discuss it here with you today, and it's around teacher training, because I don't think that the issue has received the attention it deserves. In your opening statement, Minister, you say that 3,400 primary and post-primary teachers will qualify this year. And I just want to ask you, is that the total number from public colleges or the overall total, including the private sector? So that's my first question. Every year you apply a cap on the number of primary teachers public universities and colleges can train. I just want to ask you to confirm, is that cap 1,000 for undergraduates and 200 for master's students? The total number of masters in primary teachers in public universities, I do believe, is capped at 200. And you justify that on the grounds that it is to control the supply. Yet there's 4 times as many places are offered by just one private college. So my question is on that, do you have any influence over the numbers entering private colleges? And how can you claim to control supply if you don't have influence over it? There can be strategic reasons for limiting the number of teachers trained. However, simply allowing the private sector to take over the role of teacher training of primary teachers, I don't believe serves the public interest. Since this cap was brought in 2014, on average, more than 1 in 3 new primary teachers have come from the single private market. And I can't understand why successive governments have maintained these caps when there is clearly a need and a demand that we often discuss here. And alarming, the only other course that is capped in the same way is nursing. So just this year, the same private college has moved into space into that space and begun providing undergraduate nursing courses for those that can afford $8,000 a year. And I think the crux of the problem here is around, if you can afford to be a teacher or you can afford to be a nurse, because if the only place that you can access is a private college. Whether by mistake or design, the cap on the primary teach training has allowed for the steady transfer of the training of primary school teachers from the public to the private sector, and its privatisation by stealth. It's also important to state that the public colleges are chomping at the bit to deliver the in-demand courses, but they're not allowed, they're unable to do that. My understanding is that you can set the intake cap in November for the following academic year. So the question on that is, have you set the annual intake for the next academic year yet? Each student, regardless of college, represents future primary school teachers and are important to our education system and to our workforce. But private colleges can provide a very good service and are run by dedicated staff. However, as I said, all students in the private sector have to pay around €6,000 extra in fees. And students that meet the academic criteria should have the right to go to college if they wish. And our public institutes should have the right to offer those courses. So finally, my question to you is, will you abolish the cap to allow all students that would prefer to do so to study at a public-owned college? Thank you, Minister.
Thank you very much, Deputy. Just in the first instance to say that I suppose we have run very significant and successful campaigns every year in terms of promoting teaching as a preferred career, and in fact we have seen year on year increases in terms of the number of applicants that we have via the CEO, so I think that's a positive. In fact, in terms of from post-primary, we've seen almost 17% of an increase and almost just short of 10% of an increase across the board. In terms of the private colleges, I don't have any control over the private colleges. You will appreciate that's a private enterprise, and that's
how can you control the supply then? If the intention is to control, it's just a bit confusing in terms of if the intention is to control the supply, and you cannot control the supply there. How can you do that? Just maybe on the, because there's very specific questions in this, just in the 3,400, how many of those this year would be from public colleges and how many on the private sector?
I don't have the breakdown of that for you. That is the rounded number of 3,400.
Yeah.
And I can get that for you.
And am I right on the cap for 1,000 for undergraduates and 2,000 for the master's students?
I'll have to check that for you, Deputy. As you say, there are specialised questions in that respect, so I will have to check it. But I do want to say to you that in terms of the 3,400 that we do have available, in terms of the increased uptake that we see every year, year on year, via the CEO, we're satisfied that via the CEO we do have sufficiency there. You would also be aware that, I suppose, from a primary point of view, the demographics are going down year on year in terms of our primary schools. But in terms of the influence over the private sector, that's the same as the private sector in any.
No, I know that, but do
field
you see what I'm trying to get at here in terms of, you know, if we have the 4,800 as a number and 3,400, and a lot of people cannot get suitably get the points that would enable them and really want to be teachers, that if price is going to be a barrier and cost is going to be on top of all the other costs, if they're going to have to pay, that the only way they can afford, that the only way they can train to be a teacher is to take a private course. I'm just concerned there that we, you know, I'm concerned obviously about the privatisation of education, full stop, and being used as a commodity, but that the teachers who would make really good teachers can't afford, because maybe they can't afford a private course. Would you look at it?
Well, I suppose what I want to say to you is that there is a very clear teacher supply action plan within the department. It involves the engagement with a whole variety of partners in education and stakeholders, and it is very much so regarding demand and supply. Including involved in that action plan are the HEIs. I want to say to you that we take great confidence from the fact that via the CEO, as regards the first option, we've seen an increase in terms of applications into the teaching world. I think that's a positive. I think it's not possible for us to control, and I appreciate where you're coming from, but it's not possible for us to control private providers across any spectrum. That's, you know, that's the nature of private. But I do.
Yeah, I know. But
Right, Minister, I will allow you in at the very end, right? Because I've given you latitude.